Good morning to all of you. Today we discuss about the diuretics. So let's see how the urine formation occur. So there is a three part. One, it is a glomerular filtration. Second one, it is a tubular reabsorption. There is a tubular reabsorption. There is a return of all the glucose and amino acid and 99% of the water, salts and other components into the blood. There is a in the tubular reabsorption. Okay, then third one, it is the important part is the tubular secretion. It is just reverse to the reabsorption. In this there is a secretion of the substances in the renal tubules. Okay, so there is a selective addition in the urine. Let's see the percentage wise of the tubular reabsorption in each segment. So there is a proximal convoluted tubule. We already know about it. There is a 60 to 65% which are glomerular filtrate. It is a reabsorbed from this proximal convoluted tubules. Second part, there is a thick portion of the ascending limb of loop of Henle. 25%, remaining 25%, it is a reabsorbed from this thick ascending limb of loop of Henle. Okay, then distal convoluted tubules, there is a 5 to 10%, and collecting duct and tubules, there is a 5%. So this this is important. It's during the why there is a acetazolamide. It is a weaker than loop diuretic. Okay, why? Because this acetazolamide it is a acting on the proximal convoluted tubule. It inhibit in particularly at proximal convoluted tubules where there is a tubular reabsorption is a 60 to 65%, and loop diuretic furosemides. Okay, it's acting on this thick ascending limb of loop of Henle. Okay, but it is more effective. So why these occur? Okay, so we conclude this answer in the acetazolamide part. Okay, so try to remember this. Okay, so that is the proximal convoluted tubule here. Okay, so here the proximal convoluted tubule. So in this part, all the amount of the sodium chloride, potassium, H2O, glucose, there is a reabsorption. Okay, there is a 60 to 65% of the reabsorption occur here the proximal convoluted tubule part. Also the most of the diuretics, okay, antibiotics, uric acid and creatine, it's secreted here. Okay, it's secreted here. And this is the thick ascending limb of loop of Henle, where is the site of the loop diuretics. Then there is a thiazide, it is a distal convoluted tubules. Okay, then we have the collecting duct and tubules. There is a acting of the aldosterone antagonist. Okay, so these are the part of the renal tubules we already know about in the physiology. Okay, so let's see the diuretic site of the action. So here again it is here the proximal convoluted tubules. One, it is the proximal convoluted tubules. There is a acetazolamide. Then also in proximal convoluted tubules there is a osmotic diuretics. Okay, then loop diuretics, there is a thick ascending limb of loop of Henle. In thiazide there is a distal convoluted tubules. Okay, and potassium sparing diuretics, there is a collecting duct and tubules. So these are the sites of the different diuretics. Let's see the classification of the diuretics. So it is by the efficacious, highly efficacious diuretic, medium efficacy diuretics and weak efficacious diuretics. So in highly efficacious diuretics we have the loop diuretics. It's the furosemide, bumetanide, torsemide, okay, ethacranic acid, newer drug like the pyretenides, azosamide, trypamide and muzolimine. Okay, so if we want to remember, then either there is a MIDE or NIDE. Most of the drug is a furosemide. Okay, MIDE and bumetanide, NIDE. Okay, so try to remember this MIDE. Okay, try to remember this MIDE. Okay, furosemide and bumetanide. Okay, try to remember furosemide, bumetanide, torsemide and ethacrenic acid. Okay, then the medium efficacy diuretic, there is a thiazide and thiazide like diuretics. So here which is written in the black color, it is a thiazide diuretics and it is a thiazide like, means it is a structure like the thiazide, so it's called the thiazide like diuretics. Okay, so here it is a hydrochlorothiazide, hydroflumethiazide, benzothiazide, bendroflumethiazide, trichloromethazide and polythiazide. Okay, so these are the thiazide like diuretics which is medium efficacy. It is acting on the distal convoluted tubules. Okay, and these thiazide like diuretics in the indapamide, xipamide, clopamide, chlorothalidone, metolazone and quinethazone. These are the thiazide like diuretics. Then there is a weak diuretics. We have the drug acting on the proximal coronary tubules. It is the acetazolamide. Okay, it is a acetazolamide. It is a acetazolamide, brinzolamide, dorzolamide and others. Also we have the drug which is acting on the collecting duct and tubules. There is a aldosterone antagonist. It is spironolactone, alprazolam. Then there is a sodium channel inhibitor. It is a trimethoprim and amiloride. Also the osmotic diuretics is the glycerin, mannitol and isosorbide. These are the weak diuretics. Okay, so try to remember highly efficacious diuretics. There is a loop diuretics and it contains the MIDE as a suffix or NIDE most of. Okay, so there is a furosemide, bumetanide, torsemide, ethacrenic acid, pyretanide, azosemide, trypamide and muzolimide. Okay, this muzolimide contains the INE. Okay, then medium efficacy, there is a medium efficacy thiazide and thiazide like diuretics. Okay, so here पीछे thiazide आएगा, hydrochlorothiazide, hydroflumethiazide, benzothiazide, bendroflumethiazide. So it contains the thiazide. Okay, try to remember this. Then there is a weak diuretics. In weak diuretics there is a, we already know about the acetazolamide, we learned in the glaucoma. Okay, so there is a acetazolamide, brinzolamide, okay, zolamide. Okay, then potassium sparing diuretics and osmotic diuretics. Let's see the loop diuretics or high ceiling diuretics. It also called the inhibitor of the one transport. It is the sodium potassium dichloride transport. Okay, Na plus K plus 2 Cl co-transport. Okay, this loop diuretics is the inhibitor of this. Okay, we already know about the name: furosemide, bumetanide, torsemide, ethacrenic acid, pyretanide, azosemide, trypamide and muzolimide. Let's see the structure. Here it is a lumen. Okay, it is acting on the thick ascending limb of loop of Henle. Okay, so it is the lumen part, lumen side. Okay, there is a apical membrane and this is the basolateral membrane. Okay, so first one, there is a co-transporter. This is the co-transporter and it is the sodium potassium chloride co-transport. Okay, what it does, it reabsorb of the sodium potassium chloride from the lumen side to the inside the renal tubular cells. Okay, so it contains the sodium and potassium. Okay, then there is a Na plus K plus ATPase. Okay, this Na plus K plus ATPase, it takes the sodium from the cytosol and it's going inside the blood or interstitium. Okay, it is a through the Na plus K plus ATPase. Okay, also there is a chloride channel. This chloride channel, it takes the chloride from here and it goes to the inner side in the blood. Okay, this chloride channel. Okay, also there is a one receptor operated, there is a receptor operated potassium channel. It excrete the potassium. Okay, it excrete the potassium, it excrete the potassium in the lumen. Okay, so there is a derivatives of the, so due to this chloride channel and potassium channel, there is a generation of the, this positive generation of this positive voltage. Okay, so there is a paracellular absorption of this Ca+2, Mg+2 and sodium. Okay, calcium, magnesium and sodium, it go inside in our blood. Okay, so it is occur in the thick ascending limb loop of Henle. Okay, it is the structure of the thick ascending limb of loop of Henle, where the acting of the loop diuretics. Okay, without loop diuretics, there is a sodium and potassium reabsorption by this sodium potassium chloride co-transport. Okay, it going inside the cells, and then there is a sodium potassium pump. So there is a sodium go inside in blood. Okay, there is a two channel, one it is a chloride channel and other one it is a potassium channel. Chloride channel, it again it takes the chloride from this cell to the blood. Okay, potassium is excreted here. Okay, potassium is excreted here. Okay, by this channel. So there is a generation of this voltage, 10 millivoltage, and it is a intraluminal transepithelial positive voltage. So there is a reabsorption of this Ca+2, Mg+2 and sodium by this paracellular absorption. Okay, so ultimately it absorbed by this mechanism, but in our, if we give the loop diuretic, then it inhibit this. So sodium and potassium not going inside in our body, and also there is a excretion of this calcium and magnesium. Okay, so try to remember this, how this loop diuretics is the work. Okay, let's see the use of the loop diuretics. So it is given in the acute pulmonary edema and acute left ventricular failure after the following the myocardial infarction. Okay, how it is useful? It is useful in the particular this emergency like condition. Okay, so here we give the intravenous furosemide 40 to 80 milligram. So there is a venodilatation. Okay, there is a venodilatation due to the prostaglandin. It is due to, not due to the diuretic effect, but there is a venodilatation due to the prostaglandin, and it decrease the blood volume and also the venous return. Okay, so there is a decrease in the left ventricular filling pressure. Okay, there is a decrease in the left ventricular filling pressure, and there is a prompt relief, there is acute relief in the pulmonary congestion. Okay, so it is useful in the pulmonary edema, it by the intravenous route furosemide 40 to 80 milligram. Then it also useful in the various types of the edema. It's again there is a cardiac failure. Okay, so if we give in the cardiac failure, then there is again there is a decrease in the preload, and dose is a 20 to 60 milligram. It is also useful in the hepatic, but it is at lesser compared to the cardiac failure, because there is a poor response due to the increase in the aldosterone level. Okay, so if we want to use this furosemide, then we have to combine this drug with the aldosterone antagonist, and it's a spironolactone. If there is a edema due to the renal failure, then it is useful in the nephrotic syndrome, but we have to use the higher dose, and it's a 100 to 200 milligram. Okay, 100 to 200 milligram. Let's see, it is useful in the hypertension or not. Okay, it is useful in the hypertension, but it's only in the emergency condition. Why it is not useful in normal or routine we see in the thiazide like diuretics. Okay, so it is useful in the hypertensive emergency in the presence of the any renal inefficiency, okay, or there is a heart failure like condition, or even in the resistance case. So it is particularly useful in the hypertensive emergency condition and other condition like the hypercalcemia of the malignancy, hyperkalemia, okay, or some drug poisoning where there is a forced diuresis is a necessary, and some halide toxicity like the fluoride, bromide and iodide, okay. But try to remember main use, it is useful in the acute pulmonary edema, left ventricular failure, okay. It decrease the pulmonary congestion and decrease the pulmonary left ventricular filling pressure, okay. That is prompt relief. So we are using in the acute pulmonary edema, acute left ventricular failure, 40 to 80 milligram intravenous, okay. And in the edema, all edematous condition, if we want to use in the hepatic, then we combine with the spironolactone. If we want to use in the renal, then we increase the dose, okay. In the hypertension, it is only useful in the hypertensive emergencies, okay. Then adverse effect, it decrease the potassium level in our body. So there is a hypokalemia, it excretes the potassium and chloride. So there is a hypochloremic metabolic alkalosis. It also alter the various fluid in our body, electrolytes in our fluid like in the endolymph, okay. So it is the ototoxicity, and there is a direct damage to the ear cells also, okay. So there is a ototoxicity with this loop diuretics. Then there is a hypocalcemia, okay. It decrease the calcium in our body, hypocalcemia, hypomagnesemia, okay, hypochloremia and hypovolemia. So it is also increase the uric acid level, hyperuricemia. The drugs, these are secreted in the proximal coronary tubule. So this, it is the compete with this uric acid secretion, okay. Normally there is a uric acid secretion occur in our body in the proximal coronary tubules, but these diuretics, it like particularly the loop diuretics and thiazide diuretics, it competes with this uric acid at a proximal coronary tubules. So there is a secretion of this drug in the renal tubules, but uric acid, it is a not secreted. So there is a hyperuricemia, okay. Then hypersensitivity reaction, it's due to the sulfur, okay. It contains the sulfur, so there is a chance of the hypersensitivity reaction also. And hyperglycemia with this loop diuretics, it also alter the lipid profile. There is a chances of the increase in the low density lipoprotein cholesterol, and there is a decrease in the HDL level, okay. So ultimately if you want to remember, then there is a electrolyte imbalance. So it is the hypokalemia, hypocalcemia, okay. Everything is hypo. One thing is a hyperuricemia, okay. Then two other, it is one is a hypersensitivity reaction, and second one it is a ototoxicity, okay. And other endo, it is a hyperglycemia and alter the lipid profile, okay. So there is a 1, 2, 3 and 4. 1, it is a all hypo. 1 hyper is a hypersensitivity reaction, okay, and hyperuricemia. Third one, it is a hyperglycemia, and fourth one, it is a lipid metabolic alteration, okay. Other drug, it is a bumetanide. It is the most potent diuretics, and it is a 0.5 to 2 milligram per daily, okay. If there is a resistance to the furosemide, then we give the bumetanides. Then torsemide is the longest TARP in the loop diuretics, and it is also useful in the as a antihypertensive because of the longer TARP. It is a 2.5 to 5 milligram per day. If you want to use, then we use in replace the torsemide with the furosemide replaced with the torsemide. Then ethacranic acid, it is a very highly toxic. So if there is a hypersensitivity reaction with the other drugs, then we give this ethacranic acid. Otherwise we do not use the ethacranic acids, okay. So let's see the thiazide diuretics, okay. Thiazide diuretics, here we can discuss about the thiazide diuretics, okay. And this is the distal convoluted tubules, okay. Again it is the apical membrane or luminal cell membrane. There is a basolateral membrane, okay. So it is a about the thiazide like diuretics. Okay, distal, it is acting on the distal colonnade tubules. Okay, this side it is a apical membrane and this is a basolateral membrane. Clear? Okay, so let's see first one. Here it is a, there is a sodium chloride co-transport. Okay, this sodium chloride co-transport at the apical membrane. It takes the sodium and chloride from the lumen side inside the cell, and this sodium it's going inside by this Na plus K plus ATPase pump. Okay, it is go inside by this Na plus K plus ATPase pump. Also there is a chloride channel which take the chloride from the these cells to the in our body. Also there is a one calcium channel. Okay, there is a calcium channel at the lumen side, at the distal colonnade, in the distal colonnade tubules. It take the calcium from the tubules. Okay, and it is exchanged by this sodium. It is exchanged by this sodium calcium exchange. Okay, so it takes the calcium from the inside also. Okay, so if we give the thiazide like drug, then it inhibit this sodium chloride co-transport. Okay, so there is a excretion of the more sodium and chloride. Okay, and there is an unknown mechanism. It absorb the calcium from these renal tubules to the inside the cell. Okay, in our body. So there is a more tubular reabsorption of the calcemia. So there is a chances of the hypercalcemia. Okay, with this hypercalcemia. Okay, this loop diuretics, there is a hypocalcemia. Thiazide, there is a hypercalcemia. Okay, it is a major difference between this thiazide and loop diuretics. Okay, thiazide, it is acting on the distal colonnade tubules. Loop diuretics, it is on the thick ascending limb of loop of Henle. Okay, thick ascending limb of loop of Henle. It is acting on the Na plus K plus 2Cl minus co-transport, sodium potassium dichloride co-transport, and it is the sodium and chloride co-transport. Okay, so there is a difference between these loop diuretics and thiazides. Okay, so there is an unknown mechanism. It is increase the calcium. So there is a hypercalcemia with this drug like the loop diuretics. Let's see the adverse effect. Okay, so it's all this, most of the ADR it is the same with the loop diuretics. Like there is a hypocalcemia, hypochloremia, metabolic alkalosis. Okay, hypomagnesemia. Again there is a hyperuricemia due to the secretion of the this drug also with the compared with the uric acid. Hypersensitivity reaction, but it is due to the sulfonamide. वहाँ पे सल्फर था, यहाँ पे sulfonamides. Okay, hyperglycemia, alter the lipid profile. These all are the same with this loop thiazide diuretics also. Okay, but there is a no ototoxicity and there is a hypercalcemia. There is a hypercalcemia with this thiazide like diuretics. In loop diuretics there is a hypocalcemia. Okay, there is a hypocalcemia and here there is a hypercalcemia. Try to remember these things. There is a hypercalcemia. Okay, again one thing it's seen with this thiazide and thiazide like diuretics, there is a photosensitivity and chances of the sexual dysfunction, particularly in the male. Let's see the therapeutic use. So this thiazide like diuretics, it's useful in the routine treatment of the hypertension. It is the drug of choice, or it is one of the three drug, like it is AC inhibitor. Okay, we seen in the hypertension it is a AC inhibitor, angiotensin receptor blocker, calcium channel blocker, and diuretics. These three is the first line of the drug in the antihypertensive. Okay, antihypertensive. So these diuretics, particularly thiazide like diuretics, it is useful as a first line drug. Try to remember this thing. Okay, so why it is useful as a drug of choice, and particularly this hydrochlorothiazide in the lower dose there is a 12.5 to 25 milligram. Okay, so if we give this, it also decrease, it also there is a diuretic action, but after the some time there is a tolerance developed to the diuretic action, but there is a reduced peripheral vascular resistance due to the reduced response of the vascular smooth muscle to the noradrenaline and angiotensin 2. Okay, and there is a unknown also, there is a directly vascular smooth muscle relaxant effect. So there is a two main effect, try to remember. It is a direct vascular smooth muscle relaxant effect with this thiazide diuretics, and it also decrease the peripheral vascular resistance, okay, due to the reduced response to the noradrenaline and angiotensin 2. Okay, so first there is a increase in the diuretic action, so there is a decrease in the sodium particularly. Okay, so it is a decrease the sodium level in our body, decrease the sodium level in our cells, okay, particularly renal tubular cells and these cells. Okay, and mostly in arterial and venous there is a decrease in the sodium level. So this vascular smooth muscle, which is previously it is a gives a more response to the noradrenaline. Okay, this vascular smooth muscles, it gives the more response to the noradrenaline and angiotensin. Previously it is now not responsive. Okay, so there is a decrease in the peripheral vascular resistance. Okay, there is a decrease in the peripheral vascular resistance due to this thiazide diuretics. Okay, this thiazide diuretics. Okay, and also some vascular smooth muscle relaxant effect. Okay, so it is a useful in the hypertension. Then refractory edema, if it is not alone loop diuretics is not effective, then we give the thiazide diuretic also. It is also useful in the nephrolithiasis due to the idiopathic hypercalciuria. If there is a patient having the renal stone and there is a idiopathic hypercalciuria, okay, there is no other reason, then we give this thiazide like diuretics, hydrochlorothiazide to this patient, because this hydrochlorothiazide is there is a hypercalcemia. Okay, there is a hypercalcemia, so there is a no hypercalciuria, and it decreases the renal stone incidence also. Okay, so we give this drug in the nephrolithiasis stone, particularly renal stones. Okay, then it is a diuretic, but it is also the role as an anti-diuretic in particularly the nephrogenic diabetes insipidus. In the nephrogenic diabetes insipidus, it decreases the flow of urine, and there is a mechanism, it is unknown, but we try to understand in the anti-diuretic part. Okay, so it is a diuretic, but it is also useful as a anti-diuretic in the nephrogenic diabetes insipidus. Try to remember this thing. Then another group, it is a carbonic anhydrase inhibitor. Okay, there is a carbonic anhydrase inhibitor, it is a acetazolamide. Okay, carbonic anhydrase inhibitor, it is a acetazolamide. Okay, one drug, it is a acetazolamide. Okay, so there is the acetazolamide and other drugs which inhibit the carbonic anhydrase, one at a luminal site and other one in the cytosol also. Okay, other one in the cytosol also. Okay, so how there is a mechanism action of occur of this acetazolamide. Okay, so let's see. Okay, first one, there is a sodium H plus antipod. Okay, sodium H plus antipod. So there is a sodium, it's going inside in cells, and H plus is outside the cells in the lumen side. This H plus by this Na plus H plus antipod, and also there is a one vacuolo H plus ATPase. It also extrude. Okay, there is a secretion of this H plus. Okay, this H plus, it's going outside it present at the lumen cell. Okay, it present at the lumen side proximal colonnade tubule. So H plus यहाँ से बाहर आएगा, H plus यहाँ से भी बाहर आएगा. Okay, and then it's combined with this HCO3 minus. Okay, HCO3 minus के साथ वो combine होगा. It is already present in the ग्लोमेरुलर फिल्ट्रेशन. ओके, जो ग्लोमेरुलर फिल्ट्रेशन हुआ है वहाँ पे देयर इज अ HCO3 माइनस एंड दिस एंटीपोड एंड दिस वैक्यूलो H plus ATPase it's secrete this H plus. Okay, so this H plus it's combined with this HCO3 minus and there is a formation of the H2CO3. This H2CO3 is catalyzed by the carbonic anhydrase 4 which is present at the luminal side. So there is a formation of the H2O plus CO2. This CO2 is going inside the cell. H2O यहाँ पे रहेगा. Okay, there is a volume of the water in the for the urine formation. Okay, there is a CO2 go inside. Again it's combined with this H2O and there is a formation of the H2CO3. Okay, it inhibited by this carbonic anhydrase 2 which is present inside the cell and there is a formation of the again H plus and HCO3 minus. Okay, this HCO3 minus is going inside in our body with this okay, this is the sodium bicarbonate co-transport. Sodium bicarbonate co-transport. Okay, NBCE1 exchange and it's take the sodium and HCO3 minus inside in our body. Okay, also there is a Na plus K plus ATPase. It is also takes this sodium. Okay, so if we inhibit this, if we give the acetazolamide carbonic anhydrase inhibitor, so this reaction is not take place. So there is a no formation of this H plus and HCO3 minus. There is a no availability of this HCO3 minus. So it is not go inside in our body and also the sodium. Okay, sodium and HCO3 minus it is not going inside in our blood and it is excreted. So there is a sodium it is available here and HCO3 minus it is also the available here. So there is a diuretic action. Okay, we use if you want if we see the uses of the it is a this acetazolamide is a weak diuretic and self-limiting diuretics. Why it is a weak diuretics? Okay, there is a independent mechanism and metabolic acidosis. Okay, there is a independent mechanism by the after the some time there is a tolerance developed. There is a independent mechanism. There is a HCO3 minus. It's a reabsorb other than the carbonic anhydrase mechanism. Okay, and if we more there is a loss of this HCO3 minus, then there is chances of the metabolic acidosis development. So there is a it is self-limiting. Okay, and it is also the weak diuretic because if we see in the proximal convoluted tubule, renal tubular reabsorption it occurs 60 to 65%. Okay, and thick ascending limb of loop of Henle only 25%. But if we give the furosemide or any other loop diuretic, then it inhibits total 100% inhibition of occur this tubular reabsorption. So there is a 25% reabsorption is stop. Okay, but if we give the acetazolamide, okay, acetazolamide, so if we want to the same efficacy as the thick ascent loop diuretics, then we want to inhibit this reabsorption at least 40%. Okay, then there is it's equal to the 25% total. Okay, but it is not occur because of there is some independent mechanism. It reabsorb the bicarbonate ion and also there is due to the acetazolamide there is a metabolic acidosis. So we cannot increase the dose of this carbonic anhydrase inhibitor. Okay, so there is a more reabsorption. Okay, there is in the proximal coronary tubule there is a 60 to 65% absorption occur and thick ascending limb of loop of Henle there is only 25%. So loop diuretic is acting on this thick ascending limb of loop of Henle, but it is highly efficacious, and this acetazolamide it is acting on this proximal coronary tubule, but it is a laser efficacious. Okay, so there is a reason, it is already given by me. Okay, so try to remember this thing, why this acetozolamide is a weaker efficacious than the loop diuretics. Okay, then second one, it is a glaucoma. We already discussed this acetozolamide. It is useful in the acute angle closure glaucoma, and it other drug like the brinzolamide and dorzolamide, it is given by the topical route also. Okay, then one another use, it is useful in the acute mountain sickness, high altitude sickness. There is a nausea, vomiting, dizziness. It is occur, it is due to the, there is a decrease in the oxygen level at the higher level. Okay, so it's called the acute mountain sickness. Okay, so it is useful. It is useful, why? There is because this metabolic acidosis, it's occur with this carbonic anhydrase, and it is a counteract the respiratory alkalosis. Okay, it also decrease the CSF production and its pH, so there is a decrease the symptomatic relief in the headache also. Okay, so if we give them for the acute mountain sickness, okay, high altitude sickness, and we want to prevent it, then it is given at least 24 hours before. It given at least 24 hours before 250 milligram BD. Okay, and in treatment also there is a 250 milligram BD we give this in the acute mountain sickness or high altitude sickness. Okay, so if somebody is going in the Ladakh and there is a acute mountain sickness, then Leh Ladakh, there is a drug, it is given the acetozolamide. It is a 250 milligram BD. Okay, then it also useful in the urinary alkalinization. There is a to increase the renal excretion of the weak acid. It is also useful in the metabolic alkalosis, hyperphosphatemia, epilepsy, but nowadays it is not given. Okay, 250 milligram BD is the dose. If we see the adverse effect, there is a hypokalemia. Also there is a metabolic acidosis because of the decrease of absorption of the SCO3. There is a hypersensitive reaction because of the sulfur. It contains the sulfur. Okay, there is a chances of the hepatic encephalopathy. Okay, also there is a sedation, drowsiness, and abdominal discomfort, and sometimes there is a bone marrow suppression with this drug. These are my references. Thank you.